Have you ever wanted a dream job working in Linux? Maybe as a software developer, a kernel developer, a system admin, or anything else that grabs your attention? Well, even if you do get one of those job offers, be very, very careful of the file received, because sometimes that job offer file might not be what it seems. Sometimes it might be malware in disguise. Imagine receiving a relatively weird, but still kinda normalish file called hsbcjoboffer.pdf.zip. Maybe it's from an email, maybe it's from a recruiter. Everything about it looks fairly legit. There's no weird scuffed English. It looks like an actual job offer from HSBC. And when you unzip the zip, it contains a single file called hsbcjoboffer.pdf, which looks a little bit like this. It opens up in your regular PDF reader, and there's nothing weird about the PDF itself. It seems like a completely real job offer. You probably think it's kinda weird you were sent a zip file instead of a PDF directly, but even so, the result you get seems relatively normal. But if you are seeing the PDF, you are already compromised. Now, luckily, on March 20th, a user decided to upload this file over to VirusTotal, as reported on by ESET. This is a really long blog post going over everything going on, but this is kind of a crazy situation. So many of you probably know that there are ways to exploit PDF files. PDFs are not safe, and you shouldn't just go and blindly run them. But in this case, that's not the problem. This is just a regular PDF file. The PDF is just a decoy. To understand what I mean, we need to see that name again. hsbcjoboffer.pdf. This dot you're seeing, this is not the dot that you think it is. It is not a full stop. So this right here, this is a full stop. What that character is instead is something known as a dot leader. They are very, very similar characters, and many fonts just use the exact same icon. This is a very similar problem to a web domain problem. You've probably seen the example of Wikipedia and Wikipedia, where the first example is spelt the way we would normally spell it using regular English letters, but the second example is using symbols elsewhere in Unicode that look like English letters. This is a pretty big problem for English, because I think every letter in the English alphabet has a duplicate somewhere else in Unicode, and these symbols have completely different meanings, so you can't just, get rid of them. But it does mean that domains can fairly easily be spoofed. There are precautions against this on the web, but on the desktop side, you can do the same thing duplicating symbols, like the dot symbol. This is not actually a PDF file, it's actually a Go binary. Now, if you to open this up in your terminal or right-click on it and try to open it with your PDF reader, it's not going to work. But a lot of people, when they have a file and have default applications set up, are going to open it from their file manager just by double-clicking on it. By double-clicking on it, it's going to execute the binary. This launches something that has been dubbed the ODIC loader, and by itself, it's not really that malicious. It's just the entry point to the actual malicious thing. The first thing it does is opens a totally normal PDF, basically as a distraction to the user. If you see a file called PDF, and then it doesn't open a PDF, that's weird. You want to make sure the user thinks nothing is out of the ordinary. The second thing it does is downloads the actual payload. This is another binary called simplext, hosted over on OpenDrive. And to make sure the user doesn't notice anything out of the ordinary, it's not going to be stored in your home directory. It's going to be in home/.config/GUI-config-d. If you noticed a file in your config directory called GUI-config-d, you wouldn't do anything about it. It looks like a totally normal file for some random thing on your system. And then finally, it modifies your bash file to run this command right here. It's going to launch up GUI config D or simplex T every time bash is launched, and then output all of its output into dev null, so the user is never going to see it. The only way they know it's running is if they check their bash profile, so they have to actually be using bash, which is most people on Linux, or two, they are paying very close attention to every process running, and the vast majority of people are not going to be doing that. Now, you may be wondering about that second step. Why download a completely separate binary? Why not just do everything in that one file that you know the user has? This is less points of failure, and the malware is probably going to work. Well, it's probably not going to work. Remember, we're dealing with malware here, and you want to obfuscate things, as much as possible. If you have that initial file that's supposed to be pretending to be a PDF that's then way too big, more users are going to spot that something is probably off here. And secondly, antivirus exists. So if you have an initial file that is going to be malicious straight away, then virus checkers are going to be more likely to notice that. If you upload it to VirusTotal, it's a lot more likely that that is going to be spotted. But if you have a first file that does a bunch of operations that aren't really that malicious, it opens a PDF, it downloads a file, it updates your bash profile, all of these things by themselves aren't that crazy and may not be spotted by certain antivirus systems. Now, this initial binary is very specific to this attack, but the second binary is a big part of the reason this problem was spotted, and a big part of the reason that a giant blog post was written explaining everything going on. So the second binary is very likely related to another backdoor called sysnetd, otherwise described as bad call for Linux. I'll get into what bad call is in just a bit, but part of the reason we know they're similar is simplex-t straight up just rips many of the class names and function names directly from sysnetd, with additional functionality also added into simplex-t. So if they are related, it's very likely this is like a updated version with additional functionality. But this isn't the only thing that's related. Also, they share the exact same front domain attacks. So things like apple.com, Baidu, Bing, Bitcoin, Debian, Dropbox, things like this. But this makes sense that all of these sites would be similar because all of these sites are incredibly popular sites. But they are literally identical. Also, they make use of the exact same temp file /tmp/vgauth svc log. Also, they both make use of a custom A51 cipher. Now, this is way outside my wheelhouse, but as Wikipedia describes, A51 is a stream cipher used to provide over-the-air communication privacy in the GSM telephone standard. Basically, it's, encryption stuff. Now, in a vacuum by themselves, none of these points individually prove the malware are related. But when you have all of this compounding evidence, it seems pretty clear that they probably are. Maybe there is some off chance they are not related, but it doesn't seem very likely. But this is a big problem, because this is what makes it very clear that this malware is probably from Lazarus. That might seem like a random tangent, but follow along. Going all the way back to December of 2022, there is now known to be the start of an attack on a company called 3CX. You've probably never heard of them, but they're a very businessy and corporate-y facing company providing conferencing systems and computer-based telephone systems and other things you probably don't need, but are very important for big businesses. And they are a fairly important company in this space. And in December, it is now known that Lazarus had access to their repos as they were pushing things that probably shouldn't have been pushed. And then in January of 2023, the compromised macOS version was released. This was released with a malware called Simple C. And then a couple months later in March, a compromised Windows version was released with Badcool. This ties it back in. Obviously, being in the same attack, Badcool and Simple C share a lot of similarities, but SimplexT also shares a lot of similarities with SysNetD, which shares a lot of similarities with Badcool. Therefore, SimplexT shares a lot of similarities with Badcool, so it's very likely this is also from Lazarus. Now, just as a reminder, Lazarus is allegedly, I can't say one way or another, allegedly affiliated with the North Korean government and a state-sponsored hacking group. They're not people you exactly want to get involved with. Now, while they have absolutely targeted Linux users in the past, this is a really important development. Now, earlier, there is a very specific reason why I chose the word dream job, because with this final binary, this has now completed the trilogy of Operation Dream Job. So all the way back in 2020, an organization called Clear Sky dubbed this term, and the website's not going to load. Here we go. Operation Dream Job, widespread North Korean espionage campaign. At the time, at least, its main targets include defense, governmental companies, and specific employees of these companies. We assess to be this year's main offensive campaign by the Lazarus Group, and it embodies the sum of the group's accumulative knowledge on infiltration of companies and organizations around the globe. In our estimation, the group operates dozens of researchers and intelligence personnel to maintain the campaign globally. The infection and infiltration of target systems had been carried out through a widespread and sophisticated social engineering campaign, which included reconnaissance, creation of fictitious LinkedIn profiles, sending emails to the target's personal addresses, and conducting a continuous dialogue with the target, directly on the phone and over WhatsApp. Upon infection, the attackers collected intelligence regarding the company's activities and also its financial affairs, probably in order to try and steal some money from it. And back when this first started, they were just targeting Windows users, but since then have widely expanded the net. Earlier this year in 2023, they had Simple C for macOS, and now they have SimplexT for Linux as well. And they're clearly targeting a much wider range of people in a much wider range of businessy categories. If you want to see the full write-up on all of the details about this malware, I highly recommend you go and read the blog post. It's got everything you need to know. It's got a lot more, details that don't really matter here. A lot more backstory for how the supply chain attack on 3CX worked and where everything else comes from. And also the individual bits of information that you might want to go and examine yourself and, come to your own conclusion. But what I want to say is, if you receive an email or a message, always triple check where it's coming from, and before opening any file from someone that you don't recognize, just chuck it into VirusTotal, chuck it into some antivirus software, and scan it just to be safe. Maybe it actually is a real job offer, and it really is your dream job. But if it's not, maybe you've just saved yourself from a giant nightmare. So let me know your thoughts. I don't know what you're going to think about this time. Malware's bad? I don't know where I'm going with this. Do you have a great job in Linux? Yeah, let me know what you do. What do you do for work? Do you even have a job? Or, I don't know, you're just doing something else? I would love to know. So if you like this video, go and like the video. And if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon Scribes Daily Bearer Pay link in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and I am very hungry, and I'm going to go make some dinner. Bye.